Hello out there, and thanks again for listening. This is Andre with another episode of Impulsive Thinker podcast. And this is the first interview I'm actually doing in this podcast. And I'm very fortunate to have my good friend here, John Warkentin from Swift Current, Saskatchewan, joining us this morning. And I don't know if you knew this, but Swift Current, we have one in Ontario on Manitoulin Island, but he's in Saskatchewan. He has three businesses. He's a commercial real estate. You're not a real estate broker, are you?
No, it's an appraiser.
Appraiser. Okay,
Yep.
I wrote that wrong. Commercial real estate appraiser, a fourth generation grain farmer with his wife and two boys, and he builds apartments for rental things. So, welcome, John. How are you doing?
Good.
Let's give us. You just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So, like you said, I live in Swift Current, Saskatchewan. We've got the three businesses. I've been married for almost 28 years. We got two boys that are in their 20s now. One's involved in our farm operation, but really, I got a degree in finance back in the 90s, and I've essentially been self-employed since that point in time.
Oh, so you went to university and graduated. You got three successful businesses. So how is it that you're ADHD? Because the majority of people or society out there think if you're successful, you can't have ADHD.
Yeah, and I think that's extended this journey longer than it probably needed to. And honestly, why I'm impressed with what you're working on. I totally get it. I mean, everybody. I didn't realize I never even give any thought that I might have ADHD till a couple of years ago. I think in general, because we had a certain level of success, I was able to function quote unquote normally in society. I think, the whole premise was that there wasn't a problem. And I guess, you and I have talked, it isn't necessarily a problem, but I think when I look back for a long period of time, I put a lot of energy into trying to be normal or look normal. And I think that is something that, in society, we all want to fit in. I grew up in a family where, how we appeared in the public was an important thing, right or wrong.
Yep.
And so I think when I look back over it, really, I've got almost 50 years experience trying to fit in and look normal. And, when I look at how much effort and energy that has taken, that's one of the, call it, breakthroughs from kind of figuring out what's going on.
For me too, like you said, it took 50 years. For me, it was 44 years of playing a different character so I can fit in. So which a lot of people call that masking. You're masking yourself so you can be accepted, or to hinder the symptoms so that you don't feel out of place or make other people uncomfortable with our uniqueness with ADHD. You said 2 years ago you didn't start thinking about this. How did that come about that you thought you potentially had ADHD?
Yeah, so I read this book called Spark. I can't remember the guy's name who.
Dr. John Ratty.
Yeah,
he's the same guy that co-wrote it with Driven to Distraction, ADHD 2.0 with Dr. Hellawell. So I'll put that link in the show notes too. So
yeah, so I was, I guess I ended up getting recommended this book. I read the book, and in the book he talks about kind of, he was doing his research, and he gets to this point where he looks down, he's like, I got a lot of these symptoms, and gets talking to his colleagues that are doing the research with him, and they've got symptoms. And it was kind of like, a little bit of self-reflection. I'm like, he's going through the list, and I'm like, holy crap, this might be, because I think for a long period of time, and I'm sure you can relate, I knew my brain didn't work the way other people's did. That was so we found different hacks or different ways to work around it. But it was kind of, it was one of those moments where you're like, oh, okay, we better do some more research on this and figure out what's going on, because this explains a lot of things. And one of the things I heard on a podcast you were on is that very often ADHD people get diagnosed for the benefit of other people.
Yep.
And I really think we've had some discussions between us before, but I really think, that has been the most frustrating, part of the whole experience for me over 50 years is, the hurt, the pain, the problems I've caused for people you care about in your life. So this kind of brought it full circle, which, became a pretty big priority. And then the reading started, the research started as to, okay, what's going on? What piece of this do I have? Do my kids have it? Is this has this followed to the next generation? And both of them have pretty significant symptoms in hindsight. Again, they were successful, went through school, one's got a degree. So we never had them diagnosed. We didn't, by society standard, think there's a problem. But I mean, if I can help them make the understandings at 20, let's say, as opposed to 50, the improvements in their life are going to be pretty significant, which is important.
Yeah, like you're self-educating yourself about ADHD. So after you read that book, you did a lot more research, which is one of the key fundamentals to recovery. Lack of a better term, I can't think of it right now, but the more education you have about ADHD, the better, and that you can apply your systems or strategies to overcome. So one thing you did really say well is like you did, and I think is a lot of high achieving entrepreneurs, ADHD entrepreneurs, is there's a lot of intellect that we have and we overcome these symptoms unknowingly. So we knew something or like for me, it was subconscious. Subconsciously, something wasn't working. I came up with a solution to make it or improve or work better. And that's and it just felt natural. Like, I think you can agree with that, John. It feels natural to come up with those strategies.
And I think and that was the one thing, I did your first tactical, and, the interesting thing to me was we've all created these little life hacks, ways and little workarounds that work for us that kind of but again, to me, it brings us back to how, quote unquote, we're supposed to be, right? So yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, and another great thought, but that just gone. It'll come back later. But regarding your kids, and I think that's fantastic. You're doing that for your kids, even though they may not officially be diagnosed, but you're helping them create strategies earlier in life, because there's going to be a great tool for them at a young age. And the other thing too was you mentioned is helping them at the young age, creating the systems. No, it gone again. Wow.
Yeah,
I got so many different things. We could go so many different avenues on this thing. I'm really trying to keep it on this one thing, but either way, sorry, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I know. I mean, one little thing with my youngest, he ended up, because of COVID, his schooling got cut short. He ended up home. He worked with us on the farm for a year, and he's got really, the hyperactivity side is pretty prominent with him. But he started looking at little businesses, because truthfully, a lot of us, I make the joke, I'm not employable, right? I mean, I wouldn't hire me, right?
I wouldn't either. Or me. I mean, I meant me, but yeah, I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, same issue there, incredibly productive person, but really tricky to fit him into an employment role. So he ended up at 20 buying the Snap-on tool franchise in the area, and it's perfect for him. He literally, he's one stop after another, meeting different people. He's always moving, and it's, but what we did was we used our knowledge of what's going on and how he is to match a business to his skill set. And I mean, he's into it 6 months, and it's just, it's turned into a total success. He's doing
awesome. That's right. Fantastic.
So it's just about using that information and trying to make it fit with career path, really.
Well, that's always says self-awareness is key, number one. Either it's your strengths or the symptoms here. Oh, that's what I was trying to get to the point last time is, yeah, like you mentioned, ADHD is probably one of the only neurological disorders that are diagnosed based on interrupting or being a disturbance to other people.
Yeah.
Right? You're hyperactive, you're a bother. Oh, you're ADHD. You can't plan to save your life. You got ADHD because you're affecting my schedule. So, yeah. So what were your biggest entrepreneurial challenges?
Yeah, I mean, and I think the two that I think have that I've kind of figured out good fits to to turn into strengths. The first one is the normal one, right? I forget things and I'm not on time. It's an ongoing battle. The forget things I don't think I can fix. The being on time. I tried. I mean, I'm better. I'm probably now on average 5 minutes late for everything. I managed to be on time with you this morning. We'll call that a win. But
Yep.
um, those are things that really, the problem really is that if you judge those things from someone else that doesn't have ADHD, so really I think one of the biggest problems is we all naturally have a filter that we view the world, and that filter is based on how we are.
Mhm.
So if you take the filter of a person who doesn't have ADHD and you look at the actions that we do or the things that we do, we come off as being insensitive, not caring, generally an asshole because, and what happens is that the awareness of ADHD, I'll give you an example on it. And I think I've mentioned this to you before, but a while back, my wife has a doctor's appointment. It's one of those appointments that could be serious, but in all likelihood isn't going to be serious. I get up, we talk about it. I tell her everything's going to be okay. I leave the house. I can't go to the appointment because of COVID. And then the day goes by, I get locked onto something else. I'm doing something else. I don't phone her after the appointment. I show up at home late for supper. She's mad. And I can't even remember. I didn't even remember, that she had a doctor's appointment when I got home. But, I caused pain to her. She's upset at me. The whole idea is, you don't care, right? If you forgot about this isn't important to you, you don't care. The truth is I do care. It's just my mind locked onto something completely different. And that piece was gone from, what I was thinking about for the whole day. Now, if people understand that it's an ADHD thing, it's totally different. I mean, for her too, if she thinks he forgot to put a reminder in his phone, that's a complete different problem between a spouse than if he doesn't care that I had a serious doctor's appointment. Now, the doctor's appointment turned out good, everything's fine, but it's those things that we do unknowingly or just because how our brain works can cause a lot of pain to people around us.
Yeah. And then what you're describing is you got into a hyper focus, you locked on to something, worked, and then it's very hard to get out of because a lot of times we don't realize we're in a hyper focus mode. We're really enjoying it and getting a lot out of it. And then that's one of the things that people think we forget is we're just finally our brain decided to focus and we're working hard to get it. The other thing too, what I'm hearing from you too, John, is that overwhelm. If you got a lot of projects or a lot you want to get done in a day, you're overwhelmed. And then all you're trying to do is get all that mental energy harnessed to focus when you can't focus or hyper focus. And then a bunch of stuff gets forgotten. And I think that's definitely a huge thing for many ADHD entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, as I've kind of worked through this, an idea is either in my brain or it's not in my brain. And this is where the upside of this scenario is, because everybody knows the downside. It's pretty clear. The upside is that in this case specifically, I don't have that underlying thought rolling around in the back of my head, distracting me all day. So when I lock onto another idea, another project, another something else, I'm completely focused. Whereas most people, my understanding on how their brain works, if there's let's say a doctor's appointment, let's say their kid's got something going on, that is running around the back of the brain all day taking energy. The truth is, for me, it isn't. I am able to hyper focus and get a ton done because whatever I'm working on, that is what I'm working on. I don't have that extra energy getting consumed. Now, you're totally right. I can bounce from one thing to the next all day if I got multiple things on the go. But I really think the fact that, when we hyper focus, we are completely focused on something. I mean, in this day and age of distraction and cell phones and email and all the rest of the crap that we have to deal with, the fact that we can hyper focus, the productivity side of that, for me, is, anyway, I mean, is absolutely incredible. So, the frustrating side has to be balanced with the bonus of the productivity and the hyper focus. I mean, I think the hyper focus is the only reason I can run 3 businesses. I mean, the fact that I'm able to accomplish what I am. I mean, my day-to-day looks completely chaotic because it's not structured the way most people would structure it. But at the end of the year, we run the appraisal firm. I still do appraisal work. We've got, we got a 5,000 acre farm. We farm with family. We've got the apartments. We do the property management, all this stuff. There's only one way that I can see that I'm able to do this. And it is being able to hyper focus on whatever I'm working on. And that is the trade-off.
So why 3 businesses then?
I got to keep my mind going. Like, honestly, the problem is and this kind of gets to the next one, or the next problem I have. Truthfully, when I am not productive, it makes me feel anxious. I mean, it's almost like,
That's very interesting.
I almost feel like, it's almost like anxiety when I've got nothing to do. So what happened to me, I got out of university, we started farming, I started working in the appraisal industry. We were doing those things. We had kids. But my viewpoint of being productive was work. I mean, that was, I got brought up that way. I worked a lot of hours. This was normal for us. I grew up on a farm. But my mind was all set on, something being productive. So when I wasn't productive, I had this anxiety. So what I did was, truthfully, between working and caffeine, I mean, looking back, those are my 2 methods for self-medicating.
Mm-hmm.
So when I felt anxious, I worked. But what happens is, this starts out not bad, right? We got a small farm, we got a small business. I can bounce back and forth. Well, really what happened by 2008, it got to the point where, truthfully, I was working, 50, 60 hours a week at the office. We were farming 4,000 acres. I started the development company. We had 1 employee and we had 2 kids under the age of 10 at home. I mean, it was, in hindsight, I think I was the only person who knew that this wasn't sustainable. Mm-hmm. I was working so much that in the years following up to this, I ended up in the hospital with a bleeding ulcer. I ended up in the hospital with some weird virus that was in my throat because I run my body down to the point where, it started breaking down. And so essentially, what I got to the point was, we were spraying. It was June 2008. My wife phones and she says, "Can you pick Carter up from baseball practice or baseball line?" And I'm like, "No, I'm spraying tonight. Sorry, working." And then it dawned on me. I'm like, baseball lineup. I'm like, well, I realized that night my kids both played ball in competitive ball. I'd been to 2 ball games all year, 1 for each kid. And I just, it's one of those times where you're like, okay, enough. We gotta end this. Mm-hmm. So we kept 3 businesses. We hired some help. And then, really, I did what people told me to do, right? Turn it down to 5, relax, go to the lake, go on holidays.
Take some time off. Yeah.
Right. So the problem is that didn't work for me. That was 2008. Now we're in 2021. And that led to a 13-year journey from trying to turn it right down. We were still successful. I lacked the contentment. I felt the anxiety. And now we're bringing it back into something that is sustainable. But I mean, really, in the end, what I was able to do that made my life, I mean, I can't even tell you how much better, was instead of looking at productivity for me as just work, something that generated income, through reading, through coach, through a bunch of, other programs I tried to do, I expanded productivity from work only to include, meditation and reading and exercise and family time. And so, yeah, I still can't sit and do nothing without feeling anxious, but because I've increased the spectrum of what I think is productive, my life is so much better than it was before I started it.
So what you're saying is that you need to always be doing something. And I've talked to you a lot of times, and a lot of it has to be intellectually stimulating too, because, so what you did is actually redefine productivity or redefine what you're allowed to do to be occupied. And I think I did the same. Now, based on what you're just saying, I think I officially made that because I thought I was actually going into depression the last few months because I'm reading more, I'm sitting down calmly, but I just redefined being busy, and being busy reading is okay. Cause I'm the same way. I got to keep doing something. I can't just sit there and stare at the walls and call it a time off. So you listed your challenges. And then from those, you always came back with, once you manage those challenges, you actually converted them into your strengths and powerhouses, which is hyperfocus. Hyperfocus bad is you forget stuff, or you get locked and just distracted, and you forget that there's something outside of your hyperfocus to be aware of. The staying busy, the workaholism that we defined based on our upbringing, and you converted that and you redefined it, which I think is very powerful. I think for a lot of us to be aware is just redefining our perceptions makes a big deal. And I think for you, always being busy makes you successful. You're able to work your 3 successful businesses. And I think ever since you made a couple of years ago, you made the awareness of ADHD. I think I think you've improved a lot, and you feel a lot better about yourself because you know what battle you're fighting, and you're able to understand that and then come up with new solutions, which I think is fantastic. And it just comes down to being honest with yourself and having self-awareness is what I really got from you. And we've had many conversations about that, as being self-aware. So knowing you and the way you're just talking, I'm pretty sure a lot of listeners here are wondering is, do you have a next big project going on in that big brain of yours that can't stop?
Yeah, it's funny. Part of this, I don't know, you and I both know Julia Waller, the unique ability. I did the training with her, and
At Strategic Coach.
Yeah, and the whole unique ability thing. I mean, whether you're a coach or not, you can get her book. You can kind of go through it, but that was part of this whole journey too. But it's really about trying to. What I haven't done in the past always is match my business to my strengths, right? So it was more business opportunity. Let's do it. Let's focus on it. So the next one, our development company, really, we've been building apartment buildings and renting them out since 2010. Every time we built a building, I want it better, more energy efficient, higher quality. And what we're really working on now is, my belief is if I can hyper focus on something that can bring value to the market, it is energy efficient, affordable housing. So, what I really want to work on is, being able, there's some real cool new technologies in the construction industry that can literally reduce the natural gas requirements for heating by over 50% to some of these new buildings. Some of them can be completely net zero, which is the equivalent of off grid, but bring that to the marketplace. The problem is right now, those things are expensive. So what I want to work on is my knowledge and my focus, bring that into place whereby maybe, the goal is to be able to offer that at equivalent levels to traditional building practices. But ideally get that down, to 90% or less of what the current building costs are. Because then we'll be able to hit this new generation of people, the 20-something-year-olds that I'm pretty familiar with, because I got 2 that are in our family. They want to save the planet. They want to be part of this green movement. They do not want to spend $1 to make that happen. So this, if I can take my knowledge and my focus and get this to a point where, we can hit the levels I'd like to see, essentially it's a win-win. we get the energy efficiency, but we also can target that next group of potential customers.
Well, that's cool because I think like I'm in the construction industry with my engineering company, Objective Engineering. And I'll tell you one thing, engineering, contractors, they're all stuck on what's being done now. And it's very hard to come up with new innovative ideas. And I think the ADHD brain, like definitely, I know you have, we definitely think outside of the box and we have unique ways of looking and seeing at things that a lot of people can't see. So I think that's going to be a huge benefit to society and definitely an interesting project. I got to definitely keep us up to date on that. Well, John, our time's come to a near end here. And man, we can really talk a lot about this stuff. I know a lot of stuff you said resonate with me, and I'm really impressed that, when there were symptoms, which becomes a disorder if it's interrupting your day-to-day, you converted those into strengths. You managed the systems and then became your powerhouse. And I think that's very key. And I've always been saying, manage symptoms are strengths, or unmanaged strengths are your weaknesses. So good on you. And I think and I hope everyone who's listening to see here, it's all possible. It can be done, but it just comes down to self-awareness and education. And then I know for me, John, the more we talk about it, the more we don't have to explain our symptoms or explain that. We just, he's like, oh yeah, I know what you mean. Talking to like-minded people and like-brained people, it definitely helps validate what we're going through. But at the same time, since we understand and get it, we can come up with joint, we can help each other with strategies and learn from each other. So, John, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. And I hope someday you can come back, because I definitely think we can have a lot of conversations and expand on what we've talked about today. So again, thanks again for listening at this episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, please share. And if you're interested in what we're talking about, please subscribe. And remember, ADHD is only a part of you. It is not all of you. Have a good day. Take care.
Thank you.